We're talking about defining leadership. I want to show you tonight where we got our leadership mentality from. It came from this guy right here. Now, Caesar was not a Greek. He was a Roman. But the Romans invaded Greece. The Greeks were the first civilization who documented systematic study of human behavior. This is important. If you want to sound smart, write what I said and then repeat it. Let me say it again. The Greeks were the first civilization to document systematic study, research on human behavior. So the Greeks were what they call intellectuals. They were called from the Hellenistic period. This was the period of humanity where reason became God. Reason means they reasoned out everything. It's another form of humanism. The Greeks were thinkers. Everybody say thinkers. They were very dangerous because they were thinkers. Thinkers will always rule doers. So the Greeks were the first ones who produced all this material on human behavior. Matter of fact, three of the most famous leaders from that group, you know them or heard about them: Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato. They were Greeks. They invented things like Democrata. Sounds familiar? Yes. They invented democracy. The Greeks did. That's not from the Bible, that's from the Greeks. They're the first ones to develop the concept of citizen. Matter of fact, the Greek word for citizen, write it down, is the word P-O-L-I-T-E-S. Politis. That sounds familiar? It's politician. That's the word in Greek. They're the first ones to study human control. They're the first ones to document manipulations, mechanism, how to control humans. The Greeks were fantastic thinkers. They're the first ones to invent what we call leadership theory. I'm getting at something very important here. So let me give you now, I studied this in college and I was shocked. And then when I finished college, I kept reading and I was more shocked. I discovered that the Greeks actually still rule the world. The Greeks are ruling the world from their grave. As a matter of fact, dead men rule the Bahamas. Dead men. Dead men rule America. Dead men. Dead men rule Europe. Dead men. Why? Their ideas are so powerful. They left it after they died. They invented democracy, and it's ruling the whole Western world, including the Bahamas. That's dead men ruling your country. They were powerful. Now, the Greeks, when I studied them, they had all these complicated ideas about human authority and human power. And they studied, you know, the concepts of how to control crowds and how to manipulate people, and very interesting concepts. I isolated a few of them for you that survived even today in our culture. Here's the first one. The Greeks believed that leadership was a product of natural endowment. Write it down. What does that mean? The Greeks believed that certain humans were endowed with certain unique characteristics. And if you weren't born with those qualities, then their conclusion was you were created by the divine gods to be a slave. They believed that. So it doesn't matter what you think about yourself. They would study you and see if you have those natural endowments. If you don't have them, it doesn't matter how many degrees you get from college. You are simply an educated slave. That's a Greek idea. Another one of their beliefs is this: leadership is a product of birth traits. The Greeks believed that you who were born with certain unique traits were automatically leaders. Those who were born without those traits are automatically slaves. So their society was very, very neat. No traits, traits. Slaves, leaders. Let me give you an example, because when I read the traits, I became a little bit sick. One of the traits were, if you were born with sharp pointed nose, blue eyes, fair skin like white, and thin lips. This is written in their document. You were born to be a leader. Now, you know I canceled, right? That's it for me. I done lost a long time. I got dark skin, big nose, my lips big. And my hair is not blonde, and my eyes ain't blue. I'm a slave. So if I was born in Greece 2,000 years ago, there's no question where I belonged. So you just know where to go. You just behave yourself. So you were relegated by destiny to be a slave. The Greeks believed that. The third thing the Greeks believed is very interesting. The Greeks believed that leadership was a product of providence. Providence means the gods chose you to be leaders. Therefore, those who were not chosen by the gods were destined to be followers. Destined means you ain't got a chance to be a leader. Now, this is very important here. So you ever wonder why the Greeks had so many gods? They were polytheists. That's a big word. It simply means many gods. It's the Greeks who had gods like Zeus and Apollos. These are Greek gods. They had gods like Diana of the Ephesians, all these weird gods. They had hundreds of gods. Matter of fact, the Greek rulers believed they were sons of the gods. That's why the word Hercules is a Greek son of a god. All them stories you hear, these are Greek myths. And they're saying that those who were born are not chosen by the gods are supposed to serve us who were chosen by the gods. In other words, you were born to serve me. If you got big nose, black skin, thin lips, if your lips were big, you're my servant. If your hair was not blonde and if it was nappy, you are a slave. So this is serious. So this is the philosophy of the day. Putting on a suit and wearing a tie didn't impress them. You are simply a well-dressed slave. See, some of y'all think that changed. That's why I'm getting to it slowly. I'm working my way there. See, some of y'all think that because you came back home with a PhD, that they ain't gonna bring the white consultant in and work over you. And you got more degrees. Because somewhere in their twisted mind, they are still sick with Greek thinking. This permeates our structures. It permeates the fabric of our leadership. That's why I am so weird when I be among them. I'd be so ashamed that they even think that way. How can you think that we're not good enough to own something? Because they're being convinced by the Greeks. The last one, the Greeks believed that leadership was a product of charismatic personality. You'll find this in the writings. Go on the internet, you type in charismatic personality, the Greeks will come up. The Greeks invented the word charisma. That's a Greek word. Do you know what it means? Write it down. It means gifts of the gods, plural, or giftings of the gods. Charisma. Charisma. Gifts of the gods. In other words, the Greeks believed that people who were born with certain gifts from the gods were automatically leaders. Let me name some of the gifts they wrote. Flamboyant personality. That's a gift from God. You know, people who are always up front. Hey, hey. They said that person was born to be a leader. If you're quiet and very, reserved, they say, oh, you're born to be a slave. Second quality they say is charismatic is ability to speak. People talk a lot. Talk, like, the one who was talking. They say that's a gift from the God. So if you are quiet, you don't talk, like my wife, you're born to be a slave. My wife wouldn't survive in a Greek culture. The Greeks believed one of the traits that they talk about, this charismatic trait, is one where you are communicative. Like you don't mind talking to people, like getting to know people. You're open. We call it extrovert. Yeah, they say that's charismatic, extrovert spirit. The Greeks say if you have an extrovert spirit, then you are automatically a leader. So anybody who is reserved and careful will automatically a servant, a slave. Now, these are real